The tick is so faint you feel it in the line before you see anything move. Then a heavy swirl folds the duckweed 6 feet from your shoes, exactly where you stopped looking while your cast sailed toward the middle. The water closes, and the fish is gone. Most beginners answer that moment by casting farther. The biggest fish must live in the biggest, deepest-looking piece of water. Yet the only giant you've actually seen was using the neglected strip at your feet, where shade, weeds, and a sudden drop put food beside an escape route. Before the next cast, reel in and touch everything. Make sure the hook point is bare, the lure swims upright, the bait is still on, and the line isn't wrapped around the tip. A perfect location can't rescue a hook buried in pond grass. Once the rig works, don't ask where a large fish could fit. Ask where it can eat without spending much energy or exposing itself for long. That question works across ponds and lakes because large fish still need regular meals, while every long chase carries a cost. Species behave differently, and a heavy fish won't always choose the easiest meal, but efficient opportunities become valuable. Food close to cover, comfortable water, or a quick route into depth. That can be a laydown beside deeper water, the outside edge of a weed bed, a shaded culvert, a point falling into a basin, or the face of a dam. The feature isn't magic by itself. What matters is the useful edge it creates. One decision comes before searching that edge. Choose the species you're after and make sure the water can produce one at the size you mean by giant. State fishery surveys, stocking histories, recent verified catches, and knowledgeable local reports can all provide clues. Technique can help you locate a large fish that exists. It can't manufacture one in water that has never grown or received it. Walk before you cast. On a small pond, make one quiet lap several yards back from the bank, especially when the sun is low. Look for a bluegill that suddenly disappears, a V-shaped wake under an overhang, a dark opening in the weeds, or one patch of stained water where something has been rooting. On a lake, shrink the same search to a single bay, point, or causeway rather than trying to solve miles of shoreline. One clue guides the next action. It doesn't prove why the fish is there. The reward is simpler. Your first serious cast now has an address. Before making it, picture the first 3 seconds after the bite. Which branch, dock post, rock, cable, or wall of weeds will the fish reach first? Your outfit needs enough backbone and line strength to turn it before that happens. Keep the line within the rating printed on the rod. If the cover demands heavier line than the rod is built to handle, use a heavier outfit instead of hoping. Now test the system while failure is still boring. With the hook removed, run the line through the guides and pull against the drag with the rod bent. A handheld scale makes the check repeatable. A useful starting point is roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of the line's rated breaking strength, adjusted lower when the knot, leader, or hook is the weaker link. The drag should release smoothly, not lock or jerk, and any rough line gets cut away and retied. Then crouch beside the landing spot once. Can one hand reach the open net and pliers without stepping across branches? Is the footing firm with a clear path to the water? Plan the release now, too. Wet your hands before touching the fish, keep it low over the water or a wet unhooking mat, support its body, and return it promptly. This preparation doesn't make a fish bite. It keeps the bite from becoming a 3-second story about the one that broke off. At first light, small bluegills peck beneath a willow while the bright pocket beyond them seems to invite a cast. Stay low and send a weedless jig or a compact bluegill-shaped soft plastic rigged on a single hook along the shadow line, so it remains beside the cover for most of the retrieve. The familiar belief is that a bigger lure automatically finds a bigger largemouth bass. Sometimes it only gives every fish a larger object to refuse. Choose the lure because its depth, speed, and shape let you work the exact lane cleanly. The lure taps a branch, falls, and the line starts moving sideways. With a single hook bass lure, reel until the line is tight, sweep the rod firmly, and guide the fish away from the trunk immediately. The fish may be ordinary, or the bite may never come. Both results show whether that lane can be fished without fouling. If the jig returns wearing a green beard, change the angle or use a more weedless shape before abandoning the location. Along a clean weed edge, the underwater picture becomes narrow. Bluegills venture out, a bass can watch from the darker wall, and deeper water lies only a few body lengths behind it. Put repeated casts parallel to that edge instead of scattering them across the pond. Slow down where the weeds form a point, an inside corner, or a gap. Those irregular places concentrate movement and give an ambush fish more than one direction to attack. 10 feet of accurately covered edge can be more valuable than 100 yards of hopeful casting. By noon, that same bank may appear empty. Sun reaches under the willow, people have walked the path, and the shallow water has warmed. Staying because a good fish used it at dawn turns a useful observation into loyalty. Slide to the nearest place offering the same combination under the new light. The outside weed line, the deep end of the tree, the shaded face of a dock, or the first drop beyond the flat. You aren't hunting a prettier object. You're following food, cover, and a quick retreat as that combination moves. At dusk on a small reservoir, visibility fades and a different route begins to matter. The deepest center still looks dramatic, but a heavy channel catfish may leave it to follow a shallow shelf, creek mouth, or windward bank where food gathers. Choose a place where the flat meets deeper water. Put a firm piece of fresh-cut bait on a circle hook using a bait species local rules allow, and add only enough weight to hold it on that route. A bait spinning, buried in mud, or stripped to bare skin isn't patiently fishing. It's waiting with a closed door. There's an old idea that catfish want bait as rotten as possible. At the bank, the practical result is often a soft lump that tears away during the cast and leaves an empty hook soaking on the bottom. A fresh piece with tough skin stays attached and releases scent without dissolving. Pass the hook once through that skin, leave the point exposed, then tug the bait with your fingers to be certain it won't slide over the point. Cast with a smooth swing instead of snapping it overhead. If you hear the bait slap the water somewhere behind the sinker, reel back immediately. Waiting longer won't put it on again. The rod rests at an angle, and for several minutes nothing happens. That empty interval is useful only if the rig is still doing its job. Reel in after a short soak. If the bait is intact and clean, send it back along the same travel edge and let the scent spread. If it returns covered in soft black silt, shorten the cast to firmer bottom or adjust the rig so the bait sits slightly above the muck. The change comes from what touched your hand, not from a theory about every catfish in the lake. Then the tip nods twice and slowly folds. With a circle hook, don't sweep the rod as though you're driving a nail. Pick it up, reel steadily, and let the tightening line roll the hook toward the corner of the mouth. Only when the rod is loaded do you lean back and fight. That response is almost the opposite of the boss hook set, and confusing the two loses exactly the fish you waited for. Now the drag you tested can absorb the surge while you recover line whenever the fish pauses. The fish appears as a pale roll beyond the net, then dives because the bank light and shallow water have removed its cover. Don't chase its head with the hoop. Lead it forward, slide the net underneath after its head crosses the rim, and keep your fingers clear of the stiff spines while you reach for the pliers. Whether it is a giant or merely the first solid fish of the evening, the contact answers one important question. Large fish can arrive through a route. They don't have to remain parked in the place you imagine as home. That might suggest a comfortable rule. Find a travel edge, wait long enough, and the giant eventually comes. Carp ruin that simplicity. On a bright, still lake, 3 broad backs may ghost over a shallow flat while a carefully baited hook sits untouched. More bait feels like the obvious answer. A large pile, though, can scatter fish if it lands loudly. Feed them before they find the hook, or attract every bird and small nuisance fish nearby. So the first task is watching. A steady chain of tiny bubbles moving across the flat can mark a feeding carp disturbing the bottom. One isolated burst can be nothing more than gas escaping the mud. A cloud that advances, pauses, and advances again is worth approaching from down the bank with soft steps. Its movement gives you a route, and that route matters more than the exact place where a broadback happened to appear. Where local rules allow sweet corn as bait, press 2 or 3 kernels of canned corn onto the bend and short shank of a single hook, leaving the point clear. Add only enough weight to settle the bait on the route you chose. If it rolls away from that line, add a little weight. If it strikes the shallow water with a heavy slap, remove some. Place it ahead of the moving bubbles, not on top of the fish you can see, then lower the rod so the line near shore doesn't hang visibly across the surface. Secure the rod where a running carp cannot pull it into the lake. The quiet presentation can produce a violent first run. Don't grab the spool and try to stop it instantly. Look ahead instead. If the bank is open, move with the fish and recover line when it turns. If reeds, dock cables, or other anglers block that direction, change your angle before the line reaches them. The restraint that earned the bite now becomes patient control. Then imagine the bubbles stop, the backs vanish, and half an hour passes. Beginners often make one of two expensive mistakes here: abandoning a useful place after 5 quiet minutes, or remaining for 3 hours because a giant was once visible there. Time alone doesn't decide which action is correct. Ask whether the reason for the fish to use that spot still exists. Is food still being disturbed? Is shade reaching the margin? Is wind still pressing into that bank? Does the route still connect the flat to comfortable water? If the reason has disappeared, move. If it remains and the presentation is still working, give the window time to reopen. A cold front, rising sun, boat traffic, or suddenly clearing water can erase the shallow signs without removing the fish from the lake. The earlier idea that giants use the best edge now needs one more condition. The edge is an appointment, not an address. Bass may settle deeper beside the same weed wall, catfish may delay their movement onto the shelf, and carp may hold beyond the visible flat. You don't need to name their exact mood. You need to stop presenting a bait in water they have stopped using. Make one discipline change before leaving. For bass, back away and work the first deeper break with a lure you can keep near the bottom or along the outer weeds. For catfish, move the bait to the mouth of the root. Where local rules allow more than one rod, a second bait can test farther along it. For carp, stop adding disturbance and intercept the deeper exit instead of throwing more feed onto an empty flat. Give the change enough time to work, but attach it to a reason you can see. Then, patience has a purpose instead of merely consuming the afternoon. The strongest temptation arrives when a big fish finally shows itself somewhere inconvenient. A wake pushes through branches, a catfish rolls beyond casting range, or a carp feeds beneath a dock cable. The sight can make tackle and footing feel negotiable. They aren't. If hooking that fish means it will immediately wrap a post, enter a drain, cross a swimming area, or leave you above a steep bank without a landing route, don't make the cast. Move to an angle that lets you guide it out, wait for it to travel, or leave it alone. A giant hooked without a safe path is often just a broken line attached to a fish. When the angle is right, the final cast can look almost unimpressive. It lands beyond the active patch and enters quietly, allowing the offering to approach with the water's normal movement instead of dropping onto the fish's head. The line twitches once. You feel weight and use the response that matches the target. Reel into a circle hook, sweep a single hook bass lure tight, or let a carp turn against steady pressure. Then the preparation disappears into the moment. The weeds bow, the line cuts a deep arc, and water lifts over a back that seems too broad for the place. The clear bank gives you room. The waiting net receives the fish, and a few moments later, it kicks free from your wet hands and disappears. A beginner catches giant fish in a pond or lake by making one shared decision before choosing the technique. Find the place and time where a large fish can reach worthwhile food besides safety, then approach with a working presentation and a clear path to land it. Before the next long cast, look again at the shade, weeds, drop, or travel lane beside your own shadow. Sometimes the largest thing in the lake is waiting inside the smallest useful piece of it, close enough that the first sign is only a tick in your hand.